Hello my friends, I'm back for a massive roundup of new free VR games and experiences. We're covering 30 noteworthy free downloads today, all spanning many different genres through a ton of variety. So I'm quite confident that you'll find at least a few things in here that you'll enjoy. Let's go! VAIL VR is a sleek, futuristic first-person shooter that used to be exclusively a paid game, but there's now some free-to-play modes, in addition to the full game being purchasable. The free-play modes include a massive arena with free-for-all players everywhere, and a 1 vs 1 mode within a generated simulator arena. I've gotta say that I'm a real fan of the visual style of VAIL. It's really unique within the shooter genre. It's a minimalistic visual style with elements of near-future sci-fi blending with a corporate industrial feel. It features great interactions with the weapons, and for a free shooter, it's totally worth a spin. The only mode of movement is sliding. Zero-G Nuclear Space Bunnies is part RTS and part space building sandbox. Command your space bunnies to fly and retrieve resources, or use their grappling hooks to steer asteroids. You can collide them or bring them to the asteroid crusher that you'll build. Either way, they'll provide resources for your bunnies to collect. With those resources, you'll build up your space station, breed space bunnies, and grow carrots to feed them. For a free space sandbox, this is really great. It's got a fun, colorful visual style, and the gameplay is addictive. Highly recommended. The Riese Project Prologue is a heavily narrative puzzle exploration adventure where you play as Anna, following in the footsteps of your grandfather's discoveries, unraveling secrets from World War II. Right off the top, let me just say that the visuals in this game are absolutely stunning. Everywhere you look, there's high attention to detail and a true feast for the eyes. But that comes with the requirement of needing a monster of a PC. I got a new gaming PC last year, and this brought it to its knees. In some areas of the game, I could barely get playable performance. So you'll need a seriously beefy PC to play this. Besides eye candy, there's also lots of little interactions, including a full-blown arcade game within the game. Some of the puzzles in here really stumped me, and I confess I had to find a YouTube walkthrough for some of the solutions. This is playable in both VR and flat screen. In VR, you can move via sliding or teleporting. There's several hours of slowly paced exploration gameplay in here. One final note, be sure to manually save, because the autosaves are few and far between. Escape the Office VR. In the early days of VR, escape rooms were all the rage. Sadly, we haven't seen many new escape room games, so it's nice that this one came along. You're trapped inside this office with no hope of seeing the outside world again. That is, unless you can outwit your cruel boss and discover how to escape from their evil clutches. There's a lot of silly lore and hidden jokes to find. The gameplay features a variety in the kinds of puzzles you'll face, and you'll also discover quite a few interactables, like a radio that plays the custom soundtrack. Personally, I wasn't able to beat it, but if you get stuck, there is an in-game hint system and a full walkthrough on YouTube. For movement, there's both sliding and teleporting. And for another nice little escape room, Temple Escape VR. You found a temple and are excited to find some treasure, but you soon discover it was a trap as the door shuts behind you and the roof is lowering on top of you. You only have 20 minutes to escape before you're crushed and forever perish in the ancient temple. It's a short but exciting little escape room with a fun theme. For movement, there's teleporting, or if your room is big enough, you can just walk around the room to reach everything. The deep end of the pool is a story-focused, chill VR RPG diorama about a duck that is out of his depth. Our hero duck works in a kitchen serving adventurers, but he has dreams of becoming an adventurer someday himself. The duck is the main character, but you actually interact with almost all the characters in one way or another. Follow the characters around, put them to work, have them confront each other, and see the story unfold like in a comic book. Grab the magnifying glass to discover and collect little facts and details. The official content is over in about 30 minutes, but there's an additional 10 minutes of post-game stuff to do, so consider it 40 minutes of playtime. Yeah, it's a little short, but it's a wonderful little game. I really hope this becomes a bigger game someday. Rampage Agents is a first-person shooter with nicely detailed colorful graphics and a variety of weaponry. You can choose between Battle Royale or Adventure Mode. Adventure Mode is more of a roguelike, technically. Charge forward in futuristic areas, destroying all the mechanical monsters that come your way. The enemies have really cool animations, and when there's large groups of them, it gets quite challenging. When you're feeling overwhelmed, be sure to use your grappling hook to travel quickly. As you play more, you can choose temporary or permanent upgrades for yourself. It's a fantastic shooter, and I highly recommend it. For movement, there's both sliding and teleporting. System Override is a first-person single-player heist game where you play as a hacker clearing a route through a variety of traps that block the way of your non-playable companion in the field. It's essentially a fast-paced multitasking challenge. Sometimes you're guided on what needs to be done, but most of the time you need to scan ahead in the security camera footage to anticipate how to protect your partner before they approach danger, like clearing laser traps, disabling guards, and more. I really like the graphic style in here, and even though it's a pretty quick game, I found it to be fun and challenging. This is playable in VR or flat screen, and for some reason on my system I had to do 2 extra things for this to play on Valve Index. In Steam I had to manually choose VR mode in the game properties, then after it launched I had to recenter my position by pressing the B button. Hamburg, Burg VR. Travel back in time to witness the beginnings of Hamburg, Germany in 1024. The humble beginnings of this city have been visually reconstructed in great detail, so you now can experience a tiny slice of the past in VR. There's a guided tour that provides a ton of information about life back then, as well as some interesting tidbits about how it was developed since then. There's some interactable stations like climbing to retrieve objects, throwing fish, stuff like that. There's a ton of information in here to satisfy anyone curious about the history of Germany. The only mode of movement is teleporting. Anne Frank House VR used to be exclusive to the Quest, but it's now available on Steam as well. This is a photorealistic experience that lets you wander through the rooms of the world-famous annex that housed the Frank family and 4 others, as they hid from the Nazis during World War II. Throughout the annex, there are simple interactables that will trigger excerpts from the diary of Anne Frank. There's 2 possible modes. Story mode will guide you step by step. Tour mode lets you explore at your own pace. Being here in VR gives a real sense of presence into this tiny place that housed 8 people for more than 2 years. If you enjoy historical VR experiences, then I highly recommend it. The only mode of movement is teleporting. Rule and conquer fantasy lands in Ardanian Kingdoms. It's a VR interpretation of Majesty the Fantasy Kingdom Sim. If you're familiar with that game, then you'll feel right at home here. It's a real-time strategy game with indirect control. Your heroes have a will of their own, but they will accept bounties you place if the price is good enough. Expand your territory, upgrade buildings, and watch your kingdom flourish under your guidance. There's an impressive amount of activity happening behind the scenes. What I mean by that is your economy is constantly changing depending on the structures you've built, and your heroes are always changing their stats or their activities. Things like that. I found it fun to click on a random hero just to see what they're up to. Once you build and upgrade your wizard's tower, you can then cast spells directly by your very command. The campaign has 6 levels, which add up to several hours of gameplay. I highly recommend it. Super Mario VR is a VR fan-made homage to Super Mario Bros. Start out in the Castle Hub world and play through 8 different levels with different biomes. To reach more levels, you need to unlock doors with stars, but the stars are hidden in each level, so you'll need to explore to find them all. Enjoy some Mario-esque interactions like breaking blocks, stomping on enemies, stuff like that. When I played on the Valve Index, my Mario was sort of crawling on the ground like a horror film, but it was still playable and I was able to make the platforming jumps. This was made as a passion project, so definitely don't expect Nintendo level quality here, but if you want to be Mario in VR, this is as close as it gets. Movement is obviously sliding and jumping. Download this while you can, before Nintendo takes it down. One True Path. A struggling fantasy author has been murdered, and now it's up to you to enter various different stories he has penned to try and find the killer. I wasn't sure what to expect when I started playing this, but I was pleasantly surprised at how this game blends many different genres together. It starts out as a narrative mystery, but because you need to go into the author's stories, you'll be experiencing much more, like fantasy combat or sci-fi puzzle solving. If you feel like you've seen it all in VR, then this is for you. Playtime is about an hour. For movement, there's only teleporting. If you're an old fart like me, then you might remember Google Blocks. Back in 2017, it really stood out as a VR modeling app because of its intuitive design and approachable interface. Google abandoned the project but made it open source. Thankfully, we now have Open Blocks, from the same team behind OpenBrush. So now modern VR systems can enjoy the same creativity from these legacy apps. If you haven't tried this before, then you're really missing out. It's an amazing example of how to make a great creation app within VR. Arthur Owl's Word Block is a word puzzle game where you need to assemble blocks of letters to form words. This is a fantastic example of a simple concept that translates very well into VR. It's really cool to have the blocks all around you in your physical space. And whenever you request a hint, I like the way the owl gives hints by flying close and landing wherever you happen to place the blocks. For puzzle fans, I highly recommend it. Star Legacy VR is a relatively straightforward wave defense shooter. But I give this one props for high degrees of polish with cartoony eye candy to keep you entertained. Shoot the incoming robots, and in between waves, choose your upgrades. At the end, you'll have a boss battle. Playtime is about 5 minutes. The only locomotion is sliding. IKEV is a parody experience poking fun of assembling IKEA furniture. This experience is okay, but it's not spectacular. If an IKEA parody sounds fun to you, then check it out. The rest of the games on this list were once paid and have recently become free. Machizzle. This came out at the very beginning of 2021, and it's a hugely underrated gem that I really enjoyed playing, and I think it never got the exposure that it deserved. This is one of those games where you can quickly guess how it's played by watching the footage. One or more marbles drop onto the playfield, and you need to manually place objects and gadgets in the right places so that the marbles collect all the keys and then find their way to the goal. It all plays out in front of you on a magic floating table, and it's freely adjustable so you can play sitting or standing. There's a lot of variety in the gadgets that you'll be placing, from simple ramps, to portals, to gravity switchers, and more. I really loved playing this. The design and polish are exceptionally well done. I find it to be a relaxing and immersive environment to play in. Trajectory Fracture is a fascinating mix of 2 different kinds of games, an archery puzzle game and a destruction sim. In the archery puzzle, you need to precisely bounce your laser arrow to hit targets for different results, like opening a door, creating a bridge, stuff like that. And sometimes you need to be incredibly precise, but thankfully there's a laser pointer and you can see how your previous shot bounced around. For the Destruction Sim, there's technically 3 different game modes for that, but I found only Sandbox to be compelling out of the 3. Also, definitely be aware of the options panel that provides changes in gravity and time speed for both the Destruction Sim and the archery puzzle game. The game claims to have both sliding and teleporting movement, but I could only get sliding to work. I admit the graphics style feels like a prototype, but the actual gameplay in here is pretty great. Tron meets Snake game in Skader. The locomotion method is to rock left and right to simulate futuristic skating. Try to make the other bots run into your path trail to knock them out. If you come against an enemy trail, lift both of your arms to jump. It's pretty straightforward and nice for playing just a couple minutes at a time. Fingers Minigames provides a few small challenges where you have to control with your physical hands. It's a little hard to describe, but you can think of this as almost having gummy hands with ragdoll fingers to add a sense of realism with VR interactions. And although I'm using index controllers in the video, they're not required. Any VR controller should work. There's 3 minigames and a free play mode. The minigames include a Jenga-like game where you need to retrieve the lighter blocks without anything falling off, a fill-in-the-shape minigame, and the most unique one has you guessing an invisible shape based on how it contours with your hands. This particular mode I've never seen before in any other game. The tactileness of the hands do take some getting used to, but I recommend playing this for the novelty alone. It's truly unique. Virtual Ricochet is an active multitasking challenge where you need to defend all of your floating platforms from enemy drones that surround you. On your right hand is a racket that can deflect some incoming fire. On your left hand is a gun to destroy the drones. But there are 2 elements that make this quite difficult. The first is that you have to protect all of the platforms, even the ones you're not standing on. And your teleportability has to recharge, so you'll quickly lose health if you're not planning your movements ahead. The other thing that makes this hard is that you need to choose the correct color for your racket and gun depending on the incoming fire and shield color of the drones. All of these things combine to create a situation where you need to think and plan constantly, especially in the later levels. If you think this looks easy, then I dare you to give it a go. The Nest originally came out as a solo sniper game, hence the name. You would sit cozy in your tower and snipe to destroy enemy robots that patrol the wasteland. Using joystick left and right will change the zoom level of your scope. If you miss and draw their attention, then they'll fire back. 2 hits within 10 seconds will kill you. That original single-player game is still accessible, I'll show you how in a bit. The current version of the game is both multiplayer and single-player. As you might have guessed, there weren't any players when I played, but if you host a game featuring the Delete game mode, then you'll get a single-player mission against enemies. In this mode, you have multiple goals to accomplish by killing and marching forward in the map. You move via sliding or teleporting, and you reload by flicking your rifle up or down. Your health doesn't regenerate, so I found it quite challenging. That's the current state of the game. But if you want to unlock the original Sniper's Nest I showed, then right-click the game in your library, choose Properties, and then in the betas, choose Legacy Content. It's a shame this game was abandoned because they were really onto something here. And if you're craving some sniping action, then I say it's worth a download. Ape Hit is a wrecking ball demolition game. Take a seat in your crane and use the 3 levers to destroy everything you can. It's a nice little casual destruction game. Astro Zip VR. Zip past polygon asteroids and escape evil chasing robots while keeping your ship fueled with glowing gems. Watch out for space mines and collect power-ups to keep going as far as you can go. And if you get enough of the speed boosters, things can get pretty crazy. Before the game starts, you can choose which hand you'd like to use, and there are lots of gameplay modifiers as well. portable farm. It's a minigame that can be played on top of any other VR game. Your farm grows all the time in the background, so the intention is to check in with your farm every once in a while, and then close it again to get back to your main game. The farm opens and closes with a specific hand gesture. What I find so cool about this is the way you can view and interact with the farm. There's a window portal which allows you to see your farm, and that window is freely movable. Additionally, the farm itself also has handles to position independently of the portal window. After you grow enough crops, you can then sell them for cash to plant more crops or start to decorate your farm. This is a really special minigame. There's nothing else out there like it. Untitled is an abstract puzzle game. The goal of each level is to get the matching colored cube into the discs. But there are many different physics rules here that you wouldn't expect. The green cubes behave with normal gravity. Purple cubes have no gravity at all. Red cubes have reverse gravity. And the orange cubes you can't pick up. They need collisions to move. There are many more variables at play as well. The red gates only allow slow-moving cubes through, while the green gates only allow fast-moving cubes. Add to that doorway switches, special walls and tubes, and much more changes to the puzzles later. And there's even more advanced cubes in the later levels. It also features a soothing ambient soundtrack that helps you get lost in the gameplay. You'll get at least an hour of gameplay out of it. For puzzle fans, it's a must download. Tomb Raider meets Rambo in It Belongs in a Museum. Join a shadow organization and search for magic treasures to undo the curse they unleashed in lost cities and ancient ruins. From your home-based warehouse, you choose a mission, and after you're deployed, you want to collect lost treasures to exchange for cash to buy weapons. And you're definitely going to need them because all kinds of ghouls, wizards, and zombies roam the ancient places you're trying to loot. On your wrist, you can summon a scantily clad goddess to help fight by your side. She's sometimes useful, but not always. The best part of the game, in my opinion, are the environments themselves. They're nicely detailed, and it makes the destinations feel pretty authentic, albeit in a fantasy sci-fi world. The weapon interactions aren't spectacular. You'll face some bugs here and there, but they get the job done. The main locomotion method is sliding, but there's also jumping and climbing along walls. The home area that you visit in between missions is surprisingly cozy, and you've got some serious swag in here, like casually displaying the Ark of the Covenant for guests to enjoy. It's a unique little game for sure. Don't expect the most polished thing you've ever played, but it's definitely got its own charm. And now to wrap up with 2 free horror action games on Steam. I don't play horror games, but try these and let me know what you think. Deadly Cryptids is a good-looking wave shooter. Within the 4-hour campaign, there's a cover system to avoid fire, slow motion, many different weapons, and realistic weapon handling. Necro Mutex is playable in VR or flat screen, and it boasts 10,000 levels of chaotic sci-fi horror, but you can play the levels that you want, stay on the easy maps, or jump to high-risk, high-reward sectors. Find the escape pods, or just see how far you can get. A graphic, hardcore, old-school shooter with roguelike elements. Well, that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe. See ya!